Hi, my name is Claire Imler, and I was the director of the short film for Kate. I am 22 years old and from Los Angeles.
My name is Mackie Mallison. I am 21 years old. I am in New York City, and I was the director of the film How We're Gonna Make It Through Till the Morning Sun.
So for Kate, my film, I think the main inspiration all came just from real life. In terms of I came up with the idea around 2017, early 2018, and from just everything that was in the news, for me, it touches on immigration in the film. And the idea came during a time where I think that was just so heavily talked about in the news, and you would see so many headlines about immigrants, and it's when Trump had just gotten into office, and I think there was a lot of words used to describe immigrants that just took away so much humanity that really bothered me, even just calling them illegal aliens, that word aliens. And then we had Trump saying things like, oh, immigrants, they're bringing over rapists and drugs. I think just words are so powerful, and when you have someone in that position of power just saying things like that and generalizing such a huge population of people, it's just so harmful. So I wanted to make a film that could just kind of let you meet a character for who they really are and not have the label of being an immigrant the only thing about them, and kind of let you fall in love with the character, while also kind of showing the injustices and how just life isn't fair. And that's why I had that father figure like Ty, just to have that contrast. That's where my inspiration came from.
Yeah. What I didn't think about the first time, which I started thinking about the second time, is because the biological father and Alan never talked with each other. I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
They never interacted with each other. And near the end of the movie, I was like, oh, maybe, the dad made the anonymous call to ICE for them to arrest Alan, but it really doesn't matter. He's so self-involved with himself that would he even think about that, he doesn't care anybody else. And I think you made that really clear. I don't know, the world building in it was super, just vivid, and I like how we're just popped in it in the very beginning.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of your film, I loved it. It just felt so observant, if you know what I mean. At times I was like, oh, that's right, I'm watching a short film and not just a documentary scene, which I think speaks to great directing, that it felt so real, and I was just watching a moment and not watching actors together. Yeah, I would love to know where your inspiration came from and how this film came to be.
I think a number of things. I think just personal experiences with me and my younger brother. When he was growing up, we'd have these games where I don't even know, just communicate with that wasn't talking, and I just think it's super interesting to see with two characters, which is something I in the beginning of For Kate, with the hand clapping between Alan and Kate. I was ooh, I just love those moments that, I don't know, just share how two characters communicate with each other just in their own world that isn't interrupted by anything outside of themselves. What was the process for you having Kate and Alan get comfortable with each other before, or I don't know their actual names, but them as actors?
So Alan, who is played by David Michael Trevino, he was so sweet and so patient and great with Cadence, who played Kate. And so he is actually a musician too and plays the piano. So we did a few rehearsals beforehand. I took him out to lunch before, just so they could meet before being on set for the first time. And since there is piano playing in there, we had him and Kate do a little rehearsal before, where he would kind of teach her the notes for that one song that is used in the film. So through that process of learning to play the tune together, they kind of like got to bond and how they would have in like their backstory of the film.
Yeah.
But how about you? How was your whole casting process? Even I know both of our films, we both worked with young actors. So how was that whole experience with you working with a minor?
It was, I think, the biggest challenge just to establish before shooting the movie was like getting on the kid Lucas, like his mode of communication or just like his language of communication. But like I think almost to the point where like by the time I was done shooting, like I had such a hard time communicating with like other adults. Like it was just like nights where I'd go over to his family's apartment and we'd have dinner and like we just like draw afterwards and just like, I don't know, make like different stories with the drawings. Just so like when it came time for being on set, you know, it wasn't like, here, I'm gonna turn on the camera and now it's time to act. Like with yours, it's like a huge serious topic. So I'm curious, like for you, like I don't know, like what if you had a conversation with her or like what that even was like.
So with the topic of like immigration and ICE, obviously Cadence didn't like know too much about it at all. It was very minimal. And her mom was actually very helpful with like the explaining part before, like because she would like talk with Cadence and be like, okay, let me like explain a little bit about what's going on at the end during the arrest, where Kate's character goes, or Alan's like, I'm just missing some papers, and she's like, papers? What do you mean? You know, and that I included that after, because when I was kind of explaining to her, I'm like, he's getting taken away because he doesn't have the right papers to be in the country. She's like, what does that mean? Like, I have papers, I can give him my papers. So I think it's just that innocence cadence that I wanted to put into Kate.
And like the character isn't even supposed to know what's going on anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So like, was there a scene in your film that was like the hardest to shoot, or like that you were most nervous about directing wise, or I don't know, was there one that was just like stood out to you in terms of like, how am I gonna do this?
Yes, the baby game scene.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I was gonna ask about that one.
Yeah, I mean that's actually a game that I would play with my older cousin when I was like Lucas's age. That was just like, I don't know, we passed the time, like we'd just take whatever like was in just in the space and just like put it in our shirt and just like pretend make up whatever story. You just ate a huge meal and you're like you ate like 50 chicken wings and that's like what's happening. I was just dreading shooting that scene just because it was like, I think it was just an emotional, like everyone on the set could feel that it was just an emotional moment, and I think I ended up being the only person in the room with them when we shot that, just because I didn't want both of them to feel like a bunch of people were just like watching them have this like moment with each other, and we had to do it a couple times. And I think like, yeah, I think like they really like felt it by, you know, like we did it, so we hadn't practiced it at all before doing that, and I think just after, you know, feeling and like being the characters for so long, they just brought that I don't know, background to them playing and just like riffed off of each other for that.
But yeah, now that we've gone through our films, I would love to know if there was like, what was that first project for you that kind of made you fall in love with filmmaking, or like how did your journey into becoming a filmmaker start?
The Annoying Orange. Yeah, I don't know, have you ever watched it before?
Not really, no.
At least?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like every kid that like grew up in our generation knows. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Or is just like scarred by that in some way. I stayed with my dad's I stayed at my dad's on the weekends. And he was gone, like, I mean, he was working most of the time. So I was like, just like in his apartment, like, I don't know. I don't even know. Like, sometimes I'd like sneak up to like his like old computer and just like look. I don't know. I was just curious like what the internet was. I just typed in and the first thing always was The Annoying Orange, and I was like, what? Like, what does it even mean? And then of course, like it was just talking inanimate object or inanimate fruits. So I don't know. I just like started fantasizing about like toilet paper talking to me, or like the sink saying something every time I turned it on, or just whatever, or like it's like barfing like every time you turn on the sink, or just, and I didn't know how to do that, or I didn't know how to like put a face on something, so it was just like taking videos of like stuff in the house and just like me like saying something behind the camera, like I don't know, like yeah. I just remember like feeling like I really loved that space where it was just like a completely different world that like was just on like that like, I don't know, you couldn't see that was there. And obviously like it, like looking back, because you can't see it. It's like literally just a sink and then like my little
and I'm gonna need to see these.
yeah, they're like buried somewhere.
For me, I was just always so like fascinated by like images and just visuals. In our like photo albums, there are photos I took on like a camera when I was maybe like 7, 6 of these baby dolls I had. And they're like very creepy photos if you look at them now. They're like very like headshots of like baby dolls with like different lighting, which is like I'll have to find them. They're like really scary. But like I just love like, I don't know, finding like different lights and like angles and close. I don't know. I was just always fascinated by that. And then it turned into like filming all our like family vacations. I think that's where it like really started. Like I loved making those travel films. I guess maybe that's where my like love for like documentary filmmaking came, because I just love like being in an environment and like capturing it like the way I wanted to, and always finding like, oh, cool ways to like film this that doesn't look just how it looks to me right now. So like I did that for years, doing like our little vacation travel films.
So were you involved a lot with like documentaries then, from then on, or like both? Or I'm curious, like did that inform maybe like what you're interested in when writing?
For me, my favorite kind of film is anything that's based on like a true story, or like inspired by true events, or like real life. So I think that's something that, because at this point I think I've done more documentary films than I have narrative. But when I do narrative, I think it always, what's similar to my documentaries is that I love pulling from real life, and having like real stories or about real things like happening in the world. Documentary definitely led into my narrative work in that sense. I'm like so involved in like the pre-production, and on set it's very much like, you know, you're like working with the actors and like you're just getting performances you want. You're like building. This is what I want. You know, when I approach documentaries, yes, there is a good amount of pre-production, but at least in the past, I don't like to plan it out too much, because I love just like getting there, observing, just being me and my camera, filming it, and then figuring it out in the edit. And like, so I guess narrative, I write the story first and then you do it. Documentary, I just do it and then kind of write the story in post.
I was really into documentaries and just like doing, I don't know, like that was like my like communicating with people, was like getting to know them while making a documentary, if that makes sense. So how, I guess if this was your first narrative, how, I don't know, from what you've done in the past documentary wise, how did that come into this process? I think just like observing in both forms is like, I think like that's really the connector. I feel like I think they're just super similar, and I think like not thinking about it, and like, or I mean not thinking about the difference between the two, and just going into the film like just feeling it out, and then just ending up with whatever you end up with, like that is what it is. Like I think it's just like those observational moments like is what really like blends the two together. Like what, I don't know, like what for you, what is like one of the biggest lessons maybe like for this film that you learned when making it?
I think when I first started filmmaking, something that was like always told to me, like maybe around like high school age, is like always like, I don't know if you've heard this before, but people are always like, write what you know, and like, oh, you want to make a movie, write what you know, like that's the only way, like you'll make a good film is if you write something about something that you've experienced, felt a bit restricting to me. I was like, oh, I can't write this film because I don't know it. And then I did the National Young Arts Foundation week-long workshop thing when I was a senior in high school. We had a teacher there that was like, I know you probably have heard this, write what you know, but what I'm gonna tell you is write what you like. And if you like what you're writing and you're passionate about it, you'll make a good film. And there's always moments and emotion and just different feelings within that story that you can relate to as a director. And as long as you have that and those moments you can relate to, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that exact situation directly, you'll still be able to make a great film. How about you? What was the biggest thing you learned or piece of advice you got while making your, first narrative?
I guess just to not think of it like a film, not think of it it's gotta hit these different points and it's gotta have this specific impact on every audience person or every person that watches it. I think just approaching it however you want to approach it. And if it's I'm just gonna record different moments and then piece it together and then that's a film, I feel that is that's it. Yeah, I think just not thinking of it just as one thing that you need to conquer all of a sudden with all these different pieces, just letting the pieces become something.
So great getting to talk with you about your film and just your work in general, and I'm very excited to see what you do next, and hopefully I'll see you at the next NFFTY. Hopefully it's in person.
Yeah.